People who marriages lasted less than a year, months, weeks, days, or even hours. When did you realize you'd made a mistake and why? 2 months and he told me I was too fat and will no longer be having sex with me. I lost 75 pounds in 3 months by doing it the wrong way, and he told me he was already seeing someone else. He seemed surprised my parents would no longer pay his bills and was kicked off their property 30 days later, per laws of my state. The bastard probably thought he could break you and have you as the obedient wife at home while getting his fucks on the side. I can hardly imagine you managed to gain 75 pounds in the 2 months you were married, so he most likely had some malicious plan. Not my story. But a fraternity brother of my husband had a marriage that lasted maybe 100 days before they split. Apparently she didn't internalize that marrying a military person would mean moving around. And he just assumed she knew and was good with it. TLDR. Communicate. Not me but a friend. Their marriage didn't last through the reception. Groom got absolutely shitty-faced drunk and slaps the bride's child from a previous relationship and then hits the bride in the face. She filed for an annulment the next morning. I know it's common for abusers to drop the act after the wedding, but you'd think he'd at least wait until they were in private. 4 months and he dislocated my jaw. But really what I want to share is the signs were there and people should be aware of them. First it was just grabbing my arm kind of hard. Then grabbing my arm hard enough to bruise it. Then pushing. Then slapping. It took years so escalate. I heard it gets worse. I didn't think too much of it. I thought I'm not a wimp and it isn't like he's beating the shit out of me every day. I thought that's what domestic abuse looked like. Then I married him. Well, let me tell you. If they're grabbing, pushing, or hitting you they will eventually hurt you worse. Yes. This first time I called the cops was because he tried to break down the bedroom door because he said I'd take half his money. And then kept repeating that he was going to call the cops unless I did. He shoved me down on our honeymoon. It got worse. Some biatch at work just screwed me over and it embedded the phrase, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them." Good luck to you all. Follow your gut. When she cheated on me for the 3rd time in 10 months. Because for some reason the first 2 didn't convince me. I had a friend who married one of the most horrible people I've ever met. So charming at first. But within the first 3 months of them being together, we all started to notice a few things and we decided none of us liked him. One day we saw hand-shaped bruises on her arms. And literally the next day they were at the courthouse getting married. We had a small gathering shortly after, which he ended up turning into their wedding celebration. Bachelor party. Whatever he could to make it all about him. He got extremely drunk. And basically tried to kill her in front of all of us. She told us they didn't have their rings yet. But they would get them soon. And he walked over to her and started strangling her for embarrassing him. She ended up breaking down. And realizing that for the entire 4 months of their relationship. And 9 days of their marriage. He had progressively gotten more and more abusive. And she made a mistake. I supported us working full-time with a 1-hour commute, each way, via Vanpool. She complained about having to pick me up at the Vanpool stop after work because it was happy hour at the bars. She also seemed to have trouble keeping other guys' dicks out of her pussy. Not me but my ex-GF a few years ago. Before we met she was dating a guy for about 7 years or so. Due to family pressures, tradition, etc. she went and got married to the guy. They went home in separate cars because she said they both realized it was a mistake. Lived with her cousins for 6 months because she was scared to tell her parents. I worked at a county clerk's office. And my friend's mom and BF came in to get a marriage license on a Friday right before closing time. They've been living together for a decade. Monday morning. She was there waiting for us to open the doors. As she wanted a divorce ASAP. Sadly, it doesn't work that way. Much easier to get married than divorced. To be honest, I didn't really want to be married to her. However, she was determined to get married by age 24 regardless. And at the time I had significant difficulties saying no. I was working 60 plus odd hours a week in a kitchen to help pay for everything, and I was struggling with my mental health at the time, and we grew further and further apart emotionally. I found out less than 5 months into the marriage that she had been unfaithful to me for at least a year, so 6-7 months before the wedding. Whilst she had been planning it, she had been sleeping with other people. Whilst she had been putting serious pressure on me to provide you a cute for her dream wedding, she had also had an abortion because she didn't know whether I would have been the father or not. When I found this all out, I basically had a breakdown and tried taking my own life. I also spent a few years after this blaming myself for the breakdown of my marriage and her behavior. When my former buddy called me to tell me he got herpes from my wife, I was in Afghanistan. Edit. I did not contract it. My buddy called to warn me. Edit II. That was years ago. I'm retired now and remarried happily to an amazing woman that somehow tolerates me. Edit III. I am thankful he told me. Seems kinda chaotic neutral. Damn. Your best friend bangs your girl but catches herpes and is a bro enough to know it wasn't a one-time thing and let you know. That's a lot of complicated emotions. Cliffs. My new wife changed the second I said I do. She instantly became controlling, manipulative, and would lie about anything to get her way, and double down when caught. The marriage lasted about 10 months. Before we got married, she was considerate, kind, and sweet. Apparently all for show. That's how my last boyfriend was. Sweet, open and considerate when we had roommates. The minute we got our own place, he controlled how I spent my time at home, who I was with, what I wore. Stuck around way longer than I should. But it's been 6 years since and I'm much better off. Not sure where he is and I am 100% sure I don't care. The guy I married went instantly from being fun and adventurous to an absolute psycho. He stopped using my name and would just call me wife even after I asked him to stop. He started insisting that I didn't need other friends and aren't you done with that when I would want to meet up with people. If I hung out with a guy then I was cheating in his mind. I caught him going through my phone to find proof there was none. There were 2 incidents that lead to the bitter end. I caught him calling me a dirty Ray and jerking off over me while I slept. And then at a concert he freaked out and had to be dragged off of me because I talked to an old male acquaintance for 5 minutes. That one left bruises. And I left him. Fuckhead. Mine lasted less than a year. He was an incredibly abusive fuckhead that burdened me with tons of shit we couldn't afford then refused to work his damn self. So I used to pull 16 hours days back to back to back. Turns out instead of working and helping me take care of the house he was out cheating. In all reality, he was the one who left me, but once I got out of the situation I realized how awful it was and didn't go back. Mine lasted 2 years. I know over the year limit for the post. The last 6 months of the marriage I deployed to Iraq. I was a happier person while being deployed than I was living at home. That's when I realized I had a toxic home life. I was sacrificing my own happiness to do everything I could to keep my ex happy and just thought that's how it's supposed to be. I didn't want to come home from deployment because I knew I would be miserable. I moved out a month after I got back and life has been much better since. Currently in Afghanistan and cannot wait to get home. My brother experienced this. He had a cop wedding. On the beach, in flip-flops, everyone drunk as shit. And part of the joke of the wedding was that when the officiant asked if anyone had any objections, everyone had an objection. They yelled drunken terrible shit at the 2 of them for a good 2 or 3 minutes before he yelled something back like, "Fuck it and FCK all of you. I'm marrying this woman regardless." It was crazy cringe to witness. But he told me after. You know, I had half a mind to call it off right then as I listened to what they were saying and realized everyone was probably right. Double quote. My sister's marriage lasted about 40 days. She found out he was a pedophile when my other sister came forward that he'd been raping her for the last 4 months. When he was arrested, police found a video of me getting dressed on his phone. I thank God every day that she came forward when she did. Because he was grooming me to be his next victim. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison and has no contact orders with everyone in my immediate family. This event was the end of my childhood. Stroke. Not me, but I worked at a company where 2 employees were engaged. After they married, she sent out an all users email advising her name change, and then almost exactly a year later sent another one changing it back. Apparently right up to the wedding she was seeing someone else. It seems that both her and her fiance knew it was a mistake, but it was one of those enormous weddings and her father was paying out a shitty load of money. They were even having dance lessons for when the bride and groom have the first dance. That kind of deal. The whole thing was like a supertanker that couldn't be stopped, so they had their day and split up soon after. I had some friends that got married and divorced within a year. It turns out she had major doubts but went through with it anyway. Then cried for the whole honeymoon and told him she had made a huge mistake. They posted all these normal pictures of them looking happy in Hawaii. But it came out later what a miserable nightmare the trip was. Not me, but a family member. She was married after a quick relationship. His family had money. And I think she wanted a nice life. A few months later, she was in a horrific car crash which killed 9-year-old sister, their grandmother, and left her with severe injuries, shattered 3/4 of her face. And she may have broken a hip. And her back too if memory serves. She was in a medically induced coma when her sister's funeral occurred. Less than a month or 2 after she gets out of the hospital. Her husband, married about 6 months at this point, says to her, "You need to get over the accident." Double quote. Edit. I should mention that the money her husband's family had was small town money. Thousands. Not millions. My story is closely related. Even if we weren't officially married. I was planning a wedding with my ex-fiancée. I did most of the planning. I work as a nurse. And my father was dying of cancer on the other side of the USA. Between work, PTO taken to care for him. I wasn't in the house much for a few months as my dad had taken a turn for the worst. Found out that she had been f***ing her ex-boyfriend both when I was working night shift and when I was in Cali caring for my dying dad. Broke it off 2 months before the wedding and lost a lot of money in the process. I still can't believe that evil witch cheated on me while my dad was dying. His brother asked to move in with us and I said no. Brother ended up moving in anyway, and during subsequent argument he said no wonder people get divorced all the time. We had been married for about 6 months at that point. Went very downhill from there. I wasn't married to this guy. Thank goodness. But 2 years into our relationship, his mom asked to move in and I said I'd leave if she did. He let her anyway. And I left. Their relationship was repulsive to me and I despise her as much as she despised me. She talked bad about me to her son all of the time and she always needed him to rescue her because she never learned how to be a functional adult. I am positive she would FCK him if it wasn't illegal. I think it's been 3 or 4 years since. And they still live together. I found out that I was pregnant. And he stopped talking to me for several days. He then pressured me into having an abortion. Then we divorced. I came to reply to say something heartfelt, but honestly I'm struggling. I just hope so much that you're doing amazingly and are so happy now without him. My male cousin went to a very conservative Church of Christ university where the women who attend there are infamous for trying to get their MRS degree. The girl he was dating was no different. They got married 6 months after they graduated with a huge southern wedding. 10 bridesmaids. 250 guests. At least 7 different wedding showers. A band and open bar at the rehearsal dinner. Etc. They get married and are divorced 4 months later because she was cheating on him the entirety of their relationship. They had sex once on their honeymoon and less than 3 times after that. Some people want a wedding and not a marriage. Of course that BTCH kept all the wedding gifts they received. Even the ones from his family. My ex was manipulative and found every excuse not to meet my friends or limit my time away from my family. Long story short, we ran into one of good friends into the mall and they seemed to hit it off really well. I was happy because I was like, yes, I could finally have a double date. because that's what my friend suggested. But when we got home, she mentioned that she didn't like his job, even though he was one of the nicest and funniest guys in the world. That was it. I saw that she just purposely kept me away from everyone, and that pissed me off. She ended up cheating on me with some guy out of the country, and we got divorced months later because nobody took anything from each other. I attended a wedding a few years ago that wasn't over the top extravagant, but is what I want if I could ever save up enough money. Beautiful venue, open bar with local beers, great food, and tastefully decorated. A couple months after, we heard through our friends that it came out that he'd been cheating with one of the bridesmaids in the year or two leading up to the wedding, and that he had this concept that nothing he did had repercussions or harmed anyone, the bad kind of philosophy major, so he didn't see the big deal. I've been married for 20 years. I think the last 20 could have been way better if I didn't rush to marry and had really known more about the person I was marrying. I'm not sure I made a mistake, but if I had a redo I would pick someone different. You know. 15 years in and I might have felt like this, but my husband and I separated for a couple months a few years back, and I'm going to tell you. Everyone has their issues. I found that if I focused more on myself than my husband, things got a ton better. Because I was more unhappy with me than I was him. Once I realized that fixing my own issues made me happier, I was able to appreciate my marriage for what it is. 1 week after being married, exactly 7 days, I heard him in the bathroom with the shower on. But he was talking on the phone, as if the shower was loud enough so that I couldn't hear him. Anyway, I grabbed the phone and ran. ran out the back door to the other side of the pool. So no matter which way he came towards me, I would move the opposite direction. No surprise, it was a girl. She told me he never mentioned he had a wife or was seeing anyone. They apparently had been dating for months. He told me a BS story of how he kept trying to end it with her, but she was possessive and wouldn't leave him alone and kept calling. I was 19 and stupid, so I stayed with him. But I knew at that moment I had made a mistake in marrying him. Thank God we didn't have children. But we stayed together for 4 years and I endured more than any woman ever should. 15 years later, he's now in prison. No surprise. My ex was with a woman for 5 years and married for 2-3 months. She had cheated on him and got caught before the wedding, but they somehow managed to work it out. She had also pressured him into marriage by giving him money and saying, if you don't come back with a ring, it's over. Double quote. So 2 to 3 months into the marriage, he had noticed that she was acting shady again, excusing herself to the bedroom randomly with her iPad and going to her girlfriend's house. She's straight, at any given hour to have sleepovers and hang out. One day she left to her girlfriend's as usual, and he found she had left her iPad this time, which she usually keeps close guarded. He found exchanges between her and at least 3 different men. One message from her to the man that bags their groceries saying that she was pregnant. My ex cannot have children. The other 2 men she had cheated with was a co-worker and the security guard at the local mall. We got married by mail. A double proxy. Only available from one US state. We're both military. I actually knew before we got our marriage certificate that it wasn't working, because he became insanely controlling after we moved to Germany together. He would scream at me when I'd ask him to go on road trips on the weekends to see the adorable little German towns. He would scream at me in front of all of his friends. My friends were never invited over. He did not allow me to have access to my own money, which went into our joint account. And when I would buy something I felt I needed on Amazon, he'd scream at me. This would usually be soaps. I have very sensitive skin and can't use the shampoo body wash combos that are made for men. He would scream at me over the littlest things, like how I folded our towels after they dried. The final straw was when we went on our honeymoon to Greece. He brought 2 guy friends along. He refused to have sex with me, and even told me he really didn't want to have sex at all anymore. And then he publicly humiliated me by screaming at me in a very public venue around a lot of strangers. He of course was cool to his friends and they went swimming. I sat in a beach chair and cried. I just knew it. We made it about 4 months before I moved out. Not mine. They were married like a month. Honestly, might have been less than that. I have a feeling they had just gotten back from their honeymoon, and the husband got caught in an online child predator sting. He casually invited his parents along on our honeymoon and told them we'd pay for it. And they not only accepted, they were so excited and immediately wanted to take over planning it. Obviously that wasn't the only shitty thing he did. Eventually found out he was cheating on me and I fast-tracked divorce before there were any kids or assets involved. 6 months in, I was pregnant already and he did not make good on multiple plans we made together. I found out he was secretly using and this affected his job. We separated 9 months into the marriage. I found out he had been cheating on me our entire relationship. We were divorced just before our first anniversary. He would somehow piss away his money and mine. And I realized I couldn't trust him to be a real partner with me. We were also pressured into marriage by religious family when I already saw the writing on the wall. But there was just one bad thing after another happening, so I always felt like I'd be an asshole for leaving. I left during a calm period. My marriage lasted about 6 months. One day I came home from work, and she told me that she regretted getting married. She said she had married too young. She was 24 and had been the one to push for marriage the whole 4-year relationship. She is ruled by her emotions and I know just needed talking down. But for some reason I didn't have it in me to manage her that day. I asked, "Are you sure? Do you mean that?" And she said yes. I told her I wanted the dog, moved into the spare room, and was living on my own about a month later. I admire the courage it took for so many of the people on this to end their marriages after just a few months when they realized they'd made a mistake. It took me 4 years to extract myself from a really bad marriage, financial deception, lack of intimacy, general incompatibility, because I felt stupid, ashamed and had a sense of responsibility for sticking with it. I can never get those years back and regret the opportunity cost of not using that time to find a better match. I'm happily married now 10 years later. I realize I got married for my parents and other influential people in my life instead of myself. That, along with terrible sex, emotional abuse, and religious differences. We were married for 10 months before I kicked myself into taking my life back. First marriage. 3 months. She just kept allowing her parents to come over whenever they felt like it by giving them a key, and they came in and started taking what they thought I shouldn't have. Like nope. Boundaries. Plus she was so sheltered her entire life that she didn't know how to live without. Added info as requested. They took my $80 bottle of Crown Royal. They tried to take my gun I was going to use for work. They took one of 3 TVs used for gaming with my friends. I had pots and pans and a knife set that cost me damn near $1,100, and they took all but one pan and left my knives. They kept coming in when I no one was home and took condoms. That's the short list. My aunt is around 20. Her parents told her she could either stay living with them and go to college or get a job and move out. She chose to marry her boyfriend. I attended the wedding. Everything seemed fine. Then, a year later, I was told she divorced him because he was abusive. Now she's in a long distance relationship with someone she's never met. Edit. She did move back in with her parents and is going to college.